Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And this is NFGeeks. Nick, welcome back once again for our next episode. And so I had this idea, and I wanted to talk to you about it. As you know, I did a video about, I don't know, a week or two ago, about INTJs and navigating the social environment. It was an Ask Dr. Mike question about how an INTJ should do this. And I sort of gave this advice for the INTJ to sort of, you know, go to the Doritos, as you remember. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it'd be interesting to hear from you, the INFJ point of view on this, because on some level it's similar because it's an NF and INJ, but at the same time it's an NF, and that's, you know, has a whole different strategy and maybe a whole different way of approaching it, and you know how they get there. So I guess let me start with what would be. All right, I started the other video with how to frame it before you start. So before, that was the main idea. Like, okay, before you even enter the party, okay, you have to frame it like this in order to deal with people and understand their type and try to get over there. So what frame do you use, or what you would think INFJs use? So before you get to the party, how are you setting it up in your mind?
I mean, it depends on what kind of social situation it is. I think a lot of NFs and like especially like introverted NFs, it's rare that I'm gonna just go to like a party or a social situation where I don't know a lot of people, you know. So I mean, let me take it first from what kind of social environments I usually am in, which is, you know, if I can control it, it's usually with my group of friends, you know. So like most of the hanging out I do is with a group of friends that I'm comfortable with. With that said, with those people that I am comfortable with, I'm completely myself. I'm able to express myself any way I want to. So I don't know if I come off as being like INFJ in that circle. You know, a lot of my friends, I got a couple of my friends into MBTI and type and stuff. And the ones I did, they're like, oh no, Nick, you're like an ENTP. You're, you know, you're an ENFJ. I don't think any of them would ever say I was introverted, because they're used to seeing me on almost a weekly basis. And with them, I'm completely comfortable, completely outgoing, you know, wild, crazy, whatever. So they don't see INFJ. They probably see extroverted. I'd say almost everybody would say intuitive. The thinking and feeling, they'd kind of be on the border about, because, you know, I'm not as, I'm not trying as hard to be a nice guy around my friends, and a lot of my friends are NTs anyway, so I kind of have to play that game. And I think they probably, I mean, my friends probably see me as a perceiver too, because in my free time, I'm just kind of, you know, hanging around.
Sure.
With that said, how am I in a social environment where, you know, I don't know a whole lot of people, and I have to either, you know, I do a lot of networking things. I'm in a lot of situations where I am in a room full of people I don't know. Now I have a musical background where I've played so many different shows and concerts in all kinds of clubs and venues. And what do? The only preparation I do go through in those situations is probably anxiety. I don't think I have a plan going into it, other than I'm kind of a little bit nervous. And I think what happens, and maybe other INFJs kind of feels this, is that anxiety and that nervousness kind of fuels me. It's either a fight or flight thing, where I'm either, you know, in a social situation where I'm withdrawing and I'm just not feeling it, and I kind of just say, fuck it, you know, this just isn't me, I'm just not even gonna do it. Or if I catch a good vibe, then I get on a roll and I start to really move with it. Almost, it's like a social instinct thing, kind of like what we were saying about the instinctual variance. And when I get on a roll, I'm just going. And I don't think my expression in the social world at that point is that of an introvert. I think it's that of just an outgoing person.
Okay.
You know?
One of the things I did is I gave specific advice in the moment to the INTJ. What are some specific pieces of advice would you give an INFJ who is navigating, maybe a younger one or one that's more introverted, or what would you, as an INFJ says, I got to go to this party, I don't know what to do. What should I do?
Well, yeah, What's
the most important thing you would tell them?
Yeah, I saw your video, and I think anybody who hasn't seen it should see it so they can kind of get where I'm going now.
Mm-hmm.
With your other video with INTJs, you kind of gave more step-by-step, almost a systematic approach.
Yes, I spoke in NT, so you're gonna have to speak in NF.
Yeah, I have to say I wouldn't do that with NFs because I got a feeling an NF is going to be going through a sort of a similar anxiety, but a different kind. If that makes any sense, where it's more or less, like I could say, I can only take it from my point of view, and I don't have the emotional defenses to be systematic when I'm anxious going into a social situation. So if I was to put it step by step, I'd say you're probably gonna, if you're going into a social situation that you're not sure of, I'd say be anxious, but just ride that wave. You're gonna get anxious. You're gonna get a little scared going into it. Saying, how's this gonna be? Thinking into the future. And I'd say just let yourself do that. Get anxious. But at that moment where it's going to be fight or flight, instead of backing down, I'd say use that anxiety and turn it into courage and just dive into it. Step 2 is now you're into it. From my perspective, I usually have a good instinct about, am I going to like these people? Am I not going to like these people? Are they going to like me? Are they not going to like me? And like I said, this kind of comes from that instinctual variance video we just did. So that's a good one to watch too, because if you have a social instinct first and then a sexual second, you instantly get a very strong awareness of interpersonal relations. And for me, it's either happening or it's not. If it's not happening, like I said, we're kind of in the phase where you're in it and you get that instinct right away. Is this happening or is it not? Unfortunately, I'd say if it's not happening, you just gotta make sure you're not looking bad, or that nothing. You just gotta make sure that you're not jeopardizing maybe a potential a social situation.
No, that's a fascinating thing, because ENFPs never think of that. It wouldn't even, after we screw it up, then we went, oh geez, maybe I shouldn't have knocked over the table and spilt the punch, and maybe I should have been watching where I was dancing.
But that's part of the NFP experience.
True, but it's after the fact. We don't have foresight. We don't have the foresight for that. Mm-hmm. I've never had the foresight like that. Has there ever been a time?
But I just want to say, before you ask me this, the flip side of, kind of like, okay, this isn't working, whatever, I just might as well, just do the best to not look bad. I'd say the flip side is, if it's really happening, just run with it, because I do think that INFJs have the ability to kind of be a little bit chameleon-like and to shape-shift and be like, this is happening, and just go with it.
That's right. So remember, if it's happening, go with it.
There you go.
That's right. See, because it's happening, and when it's happening, you got to go with it. I don't know how many times I have to say
don't thwart that.
Don't thwart it happening. Right.
Please, just go.
Just go with it.
And turn into your SP wannabe, and the INFJs will know what I'm talking about.
Oh, what all right. So I want to know if you give an example where this was a struggle. Is there any particular thing in your memory, or it could be like a repeated moment, where you really had to think this through, or just feel your way through, or it was a real, you had a hard time getting to the Doritos, Yeah. What kind of event, or what event had unfolded that way?
The best example that I can give is all throughout. I'm going to use high school as a good example.
Sure.
Because in high school, total social environment, and pretty much every semester you're given 6 or 7 or however many classes you have, opportunities to either get on with a social group or not get on with one. And for me, it was like, day one of class in high school, I knew instantly. Like I was like, yep, this class is gonna be one of those where I'm outgoing and funny, and I'm just kind of like rolling with it. I'm gonna make a bunch of friends. In the situations where I had trouble finding the Doritos were in classes where just wasn't happening. It was the wrong mix of people. There was no chemistry, and I'd say let's just say I had 7 classes in high school. I'd say like 5 of those I always was getting on with everybody, and it was me at my best, my most natural. But there was always 1 or 2 where I just couldn't get along with anybody, and not in a negative fighting way, but just it wasn't happening, and I would just kind of retreat, and I would just get through that class without really interacting that much. That would be the class where I was the teacher's best friend.
Oh.
And the only way I could be social was raising my hand and participating. But other than that, I mean, what I did, unfortunately, which I guess is my own kind of struggle going forward, is when I can't find the Doritos, instead of giving up, trying to figure something out. Because I still haven't really figured it out, because for me it's more 80% of the time I'm comfortable in the social world. 20% of the time I'm just not at all. And I kind of have this 80-20 mentality where it's you know what, as long as I can get a B as a social individual, I'll accept the 20. In life, that's not the best attitude to have towards anything, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've always taken the hit. When I can't find the Doritos, I don't really...
That actually leads to the next thing, which is what are some of your biggest mistakes in all this? Or where do you can really see where, oh my God, I always screw that up? Or maybe one specific incident where, wow, there was this time I totally screwed up, and here's why. What's the mind to avoid? What's the pitfall that the other INFJs need to avoid that you've hit?
Like I said, the only pitfalls I can remember having aren't instances where I embarrassed myself or did something that was unflattering or something. It was more or less I did nothing. It was just, my biggest mistake was not doing anything, and from that, opportunities may have been missed. I'm going to kind of trust my intuition and say that in certain situations I had a feel that it just wasn't worth it, but maybe that's just me rationalizing it, I don't know. But I think that the one thing that I did come over was whenever I had that feeling okay, this is going to work for me, I went with it. And I mean, let's break it down a little bit function by function. I mean, I get the intuitive feeling right away. And, I've said on the forum and in videos here before that, I think that INFJs and ISFJs are probably the 2 most outgoing introverts. I'm not going to say they're the most extroverted, because that doesn't make sense, but I think they're the most outgoing. They're the most people-oriented in terms of getting a kick out of really being social. I think it's because, you have to have a good understanding of what extroverted feeling is. And keep in mind, that's the second strongest function for an INFJ. Understand extroverted feeling, because that's the kind of thing that going forward, now that I know this, I'm going to say to myself, okay, I have to be a little bit more adaptive and a little bit more, I don't want to say conformist, but I have to use that extroverted feeling a little bit more to really go above and beyond my own, thing to reach out to people. And I'd say really just understand that that's your second strength, is being, an extroverted feeler. So tap into that, because that's really what's been working for me since I learned MBTI, and what did work for me before. It's just that I wasn't aware of what MBTI was. So I was doing,
you didn't have a frame for it,
yeah,
a conceptual frame.
But I look back and I go, oh yeah, that's right, because I had an intuitive feeling about how things were going and kind of where I wanted them to go, and I used extroverted feeling to kind of actually be the thing that I extroverted out. Because even to this day, I say to myself, yeah, I don't think I'm introverted in my expression. it's more of an energy thing, you know. It's like even when I'm hanging out with anybody, there's a certain time clock in my head. I say to myself, okay, I have about 4 hours before I shut down, and when I shut down, then it's just, you know, like this all night long, where it's just I just need to get home.
Well, that sounds INFJ.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you.
Of
you know,
course.
for episode 2.
Totally.
And don't forget,
Thank
follow
you.
NFGeeks on Twitter and on Tumblr, and come join us on Facebook at the NFGeeks forum. You know, the discussion group forum, where you will get to talk to Nick personally. You know, and you know, Nick gave good advice. You know, if it's happening, you got to go with it.
You gotta go.
You got to go with it. So if it's happening, and you know when it's happening, go for it. All right. Thanks, Nick.
Oh, thank you.
I can't find the thing. No, that I can find. The mouse I can't find. This will have to be edited. Okay, here we go.